All right, UFC 322 is taking place this weekend, and I'm definitely sure that everybody watching this video is excited as I am to see Jack Della Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev, as well as the rest of the card. Like, I don't need to explain this though, all right? I'll just cover down every single fight on this card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event. So, without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video. Okay, starting off with the first fight on the card, we got Viacheslav Borshchev versus Matheus Camillo. Now, I am gonna go with Matheus Camillo, but I do this very hesitantly because Matheus Camillo lost to Gabe Green. And if you guys don't know who Gabe Green is basically a bottom feeder in the welterweight division who moved down to lightweight and then submitted Matheus Camillo in the second round. I don't like the loss to Gabe Green, and I wouldn't be surprised if Viacheslav Borshchev can tune up Matheus Camillo over the course of this fight. However, I just do not trust Viacheslav Borshchev's takedown defense. The blueprint is already out there. I mean, so many people have been able to win their fights against Viacheslav Borshchev by ragdolling him and possibly submitting him. Like Terrence McKinney packed up Viacheslav Borshchev in like 2 minutes. Before that, Case Hooper ragdolled him, arguably to a 10-7 in the first round before submitting him in the second. And Mike Davis was also able to kind of ragdoll Viacheslav Borshchev in their fight. There's just too many examples of Viacheslav Borshchev getting taken down and not being able to do much to get back up to his feet or play any sort of jujitsu. Mateusz Camillo, again, lost to Gabe Green, but if you watch their fight, you can tell that Mateusz Camillo is a primary jiu-jitsu guy. He implemented a heavy grappling strategy against Gabe Green, and he was close to some submissions early on. It's just that he kind of committed to the submissions too much, which ultimately allowed Gabe Green to reverse position and eventually get his own submission. All right. And I think Mateusz Camillo is going to have a much easier time grappling against Viacheslav Borshchev than Gabe Green. So I'm going to go with Mateusz Camillo to get a submission win over Viacheslav Borshchev. All right, now moving on, we got Baisangur Susurkaev versus Eric McConico. I'm gonna go with Baisangur Susurkaev. Baisangur Susurkaev, I know he didn't have the most impressive performance against Eric Nolan at UFC 319, but keep in mind the dude took the fight on 4 days' notice when he had to cut weight for another fight against Murta Talza, I believe that was his name, on the Contender Series. Like, Isengar Susurkaev, like, yes, like, he was doing a little bit too much showboating. Yes, there are some holes in this game. Like, I feel like his boxing defense needs a lot of work. But I think he's pretty good. All right. Do I think he's ranked caliber? Not necessarily. I think Baisangur Susurkaev will run into trouble later down the line, but I don't think that trouble is going to come against Eric McConico. Eric McConico went to a arguable robbery against Cody Brundage. Other than that, he got pieced up by Nursultan Ruziboyev. I just don't think Eric McConigal, quite frankly, belongs in the UFC, especially if his only win against recently is against Cody Brundage. And Baisangur Susurkaev's better than Cody Brundage, right? I don't think that's a controversial take. Now, I do think that Baisangur Susurkaev will find some tough opposition down the line. Like, I think a Gregory Rodriguez right now would beat him. Possibly Roman Kopylov. Maybe I could see someone like an Abus Magomedov. All right, Joe Piper would smoke him. But I think Baisangur Susurkaev has a lot of time to develop. He's like 24 or 25 years old. His training partner's Hamza Chimaev. Low key, I think Baisangur Susurkaev's grappling is pretty good. All right, we've seen him instantly submit Eric Nolan as soon as Eric Nolan's tried to play jujitsu because his leg gave out. So I think Baisangur Susurkaev should get the fight done. I'm gonna say by round 2 submission. Alright, I could totally see Eric McConico, sticking and moving in the first round, but by the second round, I think Baisangur Susurkaev will use his back pocket grappling and try to take down and submit Eric McConico, similar to the Eric Nolan fight. And I think we're gonna see Baisangur Susurkaev a lot more, right? Do I think he's gonna get into the top 15 right now? Probably not, but give him time, and I do think he can make a run in the middleweight division. All right, now up next we got Angela Hill versus Fatima Kline. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Fatima Kline on this one. I think this is a no-brainer. Angela Hill, like, let me ask you this. How does Angela Hill typically win her fights, all right? Anybody who watches Angela Hill fight knows this from their bottom of their heart, right? She just looks like she's doing stuff out there, when in reality, nothing's really happening, all right? That's how Angela Hill typically wins her fights, all right? She kind of just volley punches her way in and then gets to the clinch and just holds people up there against the cage, all right? Now that works, all right, against like Denise Gomez, who just kind of swings power shots nonstop. That works against someone who doesn't have the best fundamental striking. However, Fatima Kline, all right, I know she hasn't fought the best levels of opposition, but she looks really good on the feet, right? And that's what it simply comes down to. Fatima Kline knows how to pick her shots. Fatima Kline has great timing on her strikes. She knows how to set shots up with feints, and I don't think Angela Hill will be able to keep up, especially when she's at the age of 40 years old, right? Fatima Kline also has knockout potential. That's something that Angela Hill typically doesn't face in most of the prospects she fraud checks. And while there is a chance that Fatima Kline's grappling could be tested, right? I don't think Angela Hill's the person to do that because Angela Hill doesn't really get takedowns, right? Holding people up against the cage isn't going to be effective, right? It could be if she can do that for like 15 minutes, but it's not going to be effective for 15 minutes. I know this because Fatima Kline will stick and move and will pick her shots and eventually find the knockout shot against Angela Hill. So I'm going to go with Fatima Kline to get the job done by round 2 TKO, maybe round 3, right? I think she'll try to get her reads in the first round. Angela Hill, trying to like, grit max her way through, but at the end of the day, she's not really doing much. And even if she wins the first round, like it's not gonna be by much. All right. I'm gonna go with Fatima Kline to finish Angela Hill in the third round because I think Fatima Kline's a really great striker. I think she's the one with the finishing potential. She's younger, she's faster, she's more athletic. All the advantages are to Fatima Kline's side, and I think she'll be ranked by the end of UFC 322. All right, now moving on, we got Pat Sabatini versus Chepe Mariscal. I'm gonna go with Pat Sabatini on this one. Now, I can see Chepe Mariscal winning this, maybe, but the thing is, I don't like the fact that Chepe Mariscal goes to a lot of decisions. Ricardo Ramos' decision isn't looking good. Took Lucas Almeida to the second round. Morgan Charrier fight was very close. All right, like I don't like that against a guy like Pat Sabatini. Like I know Pat Sabatini got pinned by Damon Jackson, right? But Damon Jackson low key got some pop in him. And other than that, his only loss is to Diego Lopez. Diego Lopez is not only a great jiu-jitsu guy, he's also got some wicked power in his hands, and he brutally finished Pat Sabatini. But outside of that, Pat Sabatini has been ragdolling and submitting almost everybody he's gone up against. The Jonathan Pierce fight where he just submitted Jonathan Pierce in the first round. Even the Joe Anderson Brito fight in his last one, where he just ragdolled Joe Anderson Brito for 3 rounds straight. I was very impressed with the Joe Anderson Brito fight because I thought that Joe Anderson Brito was gonna knock him out, especially because Joe Anderson Brito, Loki got some grappling in him. Right now, Chepe Mariscal. I don't know if his grappling is good enough to defend against Pat Sabatini, and I don't know if he can knock out Pat Sabatini. All right, he could, but he also isn't the type to really knock people out in the first place. So that gives me less confidence. He does build into fights, right? He does have some great cardio, but I think Pat Sabatini is just gonna have way too much control time. Like, even if Chepe Mariscal's like, running and trying to finish the fight in the later rounds, I don't think he's gonna have enough momentum. I think majority of this fight will be spent on the ground, where Pat Sabatini is gonna run a clinic on him, possibly get a submission. I doubt it, but I think at least he'll be able to control Chepe Mariscal for a round or two and win this fight in a decision. I'm going to go with Pat Sabatini to win this fight 29-28 via decision. All right, now up next, we got Kyle Daukaus versus Gerald Mearshart. Yeah, I'm going to go with Kyle Daukaus on this one. Like, it's just tough for Gerald Mearshart out there. Like, man, that last fight with Mikhail Olasechuk was not a great look. All right. And I understand that Mikhail Olasechuk now trains with the fighting nerds and maybe improved a lot. But at the same time, though, like, it's just the visual of him immediately failing a takedown and then, like, laying on his back as he's getting ground and pounded by Mikhail Olasechuk. Like, I just don't like that, and, he's also lost a lot of his fights before that. The Brad Tavares fight also isn't aging well. Alright, Brad Tavares just lost to, Robert Brychek, who lost to Ihor Potieria. Uh, his loss to Rainer de Ritter, I know Rainer de Ritter's good, but, like, I don't know, in hindsight, maybe not that good, alright? I really love Gerald Mearshart, but I think this is it. And I hope he wins, but I don't think he's going to. Alright, Kyle Daukaus is a guy who can hang with him in the grappling, and on the feet, Kyle Daukaus has a clear advantage. Like, this guy knocked out Michel Pereira, right? And say what you will about Michel Pereira being washed. I would pick Michel Pereira to body Gerald Mearshart in the first round, even right now. And I think Kyle Daukaus can do something very similar. So I'm going to go with Kyle Daukaus to win this fight by knockout within the first two rounds. All right, now moving on, we got Malcolm Wellmaker versus Cody Haddon. This is a tough fight to pick. All right. I'm gonna go with Malcolm Wellmaker. Like, Cody Haddon. The thing is, he is good. All right. You could tell by the eye test, especially when he fought Dan Argueta. But at the end of the day, it's Dan Argueta, and you couldn't put him away. All right. Like, yes, Cody Haddon was ripping a bunch of combinations, stuffing all the takedowns. He was putting on an MMA masterclass against Dan Argueta. But that's Dan Argueta, right? Like, Dan Argueta, I think he got cut from the UFC, and even before then, I always thought that he was bottom feeder competition. Cody Haddon, in my opinion, he does everything just about right, and maybe he can take Malcolm Wellmaker to the later rounds by testing his grappling, especially early on. But I'm not sure if his grappling's, like, elite level. Like, yeah, he was able to, uh, submit a guy in the Dana White's Contender Series. I I'm not sure if that guy was all that good, and I know he has a couple of submission wins in the regional scene. At the end of the day, this is the UFC, and it's hard to use regional tape unless you're kind of like a specialist in one area because, like, you could be submitting a bunch of bums and, taxi drivers at the end of the day, alright? Now, Malcolm Wellmaker, on the other hand, right, he is coming off huge momentum. He's coming off a knockout against Cameron Simon and Chris Moutinho, right? That Chris Moutinho knockout was incredibly nasty, and I think he can find something very similar against Cody Haddon, who is coming in on short notice, alright? The only way I could see Cody Haddon winning this fight is if he takes this past the first round, where Malcolm Wellmaker might, fatigue a little bit because he's, like, overcommitting to a lot of his strikes. But this is Cody Haddon coming in on short notice. So how much do I really trust him to push a pace against Malcolm Wellmaker, make this a gritty fight, and test Malcolm Wellmaker's grappling and cardio as the fight progresses? I'm not entirely sure about that. So I think Malcolm Wellmaker is going to spend a lot of time making some reads, using the teep. I know he loves to use the body teep in order to set up the left hook. I think something similar is going to happen. So I'm going to go with Malcolm Wellmaker to get the knockout within the first round or two. All right, now moving on, we got Erin Blanchfield versus Tracy Cortez. I'm going to go with Erin Blanchfield on this one, and it's a very simple reason as to why. I don't think Tracy Cortez is prioritizing MMA, right? I think Tracy Cortez is spending more time doing photo shoots, interviews, you name it, like living the model life rather than training. I mean, for goodness sakes, she wore fake eyelashes in her fight with Rose Namajunas. Like, what are you doing? And she's been doing that. And the only reason she stopped was because she lost to Rose Namajunas. Like, I don't think Tracy Cortez is like that is in the MMA game completely. And yes, she was able to bounce back against Viviane Arujo, but that's Viviane Arujo, who is like 38, 39 years old. All right. She has lost a couple of fights even before then. And Tracy Cortez was able to out grapple her. All right. But after watching a lot of Tracy Cortez fights, I can confidently say this. I have no idea what she does well. All right. I've watched maybe like 4 fights of hers, and I can't tell you what she's exceptional at. And like on the other hand, though, Erin Blanchfield, right, on the feet, she has looked iffy at moments, but her grappling's really good. Right, she's been submitting everyone, but Manon Fiorot and Rose Namajunas. But those are two top level flyweights, and Tracy Cortez, she hasn't really beat a top level flyweight. I know she got that win against Jasmine Jusudavicius back in the day, but I think Jasmine Jusudavicius has gotten a lot better. So I don't know if I could put that much weight into that win right now. So I'm gonna go with Erin Blanchfield. I think she's gonna be able to out grapple Tracy Cortez. Can Tracy Cortez stuff the takedowns and try to keep this fight on the feet? Sure, but he's very plotty. All right. I know Mana Fiora was able to pick apart Erin Blanchfield with the right hook, but Mana Fiora's big. Mana Fiora's low key pretty fast, and she hits with a lot of power. She's very long as well, so she is able to outreach Erin Blanchfield. Tracy Cortez has none of those physical attributes. And Tracy Cortez, I don't think she has the shot selection that Amanda Viera has. So I'm going to go with Erin Blanchfield to win this fight 29-28, 30-27, maybe a submission. I doubt it though, because I think Tracy Cortez has good enough grappling to survive. But either way, I'm going to go with Erin Blanchfield to get the job done 30-27 by decision. All right, now moving on, we got Roman Kopylov versus Gregory Rodriguez. I'm going to go with Gregory Rodriguez on this one. Now, this might come off as recency bias. Roman Kopylov lost to Paulo Costa, and Gregory Rodriguez knocked out Jack Hermanson in the first round brutally. All right. It could be, but it's just the way that Roman Kopylov looked against Paulo Costa, but I can't trust him to win. All right. Now, if Roman Kopylov went out there and slugged it out with Paulo Costa, but then Paulo Costa came out on top in like a war, fair enough. But Roman Kopylov, he got hit with a 1-2 that stunned him in the first round, and then he proceeded to be so hesitant against Paulo Costa, who I know he can hit pretty hard, but when's the last time he's really got a knockout? Not really. And also, he has like a 72-inch reach. He has like T-Rex arms in the middleweight division. I don't like that look whatsoever for Roman Kopylov. And I think Gregory Rodriguez can implement that game plan with Paulo Costa where he just walks Roman Kopylov down, and then more because Gregory Rodriguez actually has crazy power, and he actually has tight boxing as well on top of that. Right, Gregory Rodriguez, he lost to Jared Cannonier. Okay, fair enough. Jared Cannonier's like top 10 level middleweight right now. All right. He then knocked out Jack Hermanson, and you can say Jack Hermanson's a completely different stylistic matchup. But at the end of the day, I think Gregory Rodriguez is just a lot more versatile than Roman Kopylov's typical opponents that he's been able to beat. I think you need some sort of cardio to neutralize Gregory Rodriguez, as well as being able to hit powerful enough shots. And yes, Roman Kopylov can hit powerful enough shots, especially with his kicks. But Roman Kopylov's not a guy that handles the later rounds that well. All right. I think he handles it better than Gregory Rodriguez, but not by much. All right. I think Gregory Rodriguez is going to have ample time to find the chin of Roman Kopylov. I don't think Roman Kopylov's been tested by someone as powerful and dangerous as Gregory Rodriguez. So I think Gregory Rodriguez will be able to put away Roman Kopylov within the first 2 rounds of this fight. All right, now moving on, we got Bo Nickal versus Rodolfo Viera. Oh yeah, this is a no-brainer at all. I'm gonna go with Rodolfo Viera on this one. All right, Bo Nickal, or I should say Bot Nickal. Why he's the featured prelim on this card, I have no idea, but he's gonna get fraud checked once more. Rodolfo Vieira, I understand, isn't top level in the middleweight division, but he's not terrible by any means. All right, Rodolfo Vieira is a very good jiu-jitsu guy with some decent hands. His only downside is he doesn't have knockout ability, and he can get stuffed by anybody who actually knows how to defend takedowns. Now, fair enough, Bo Nickal's a collegiate level wrestler who was like a multiple time NCAA champion here in America, but when has he been able to implement that in an MMA fight? I don't think he's ever been able to implement his takedowns against anybody elite in an MMA fight. Even against Paul Craig, who I don't consider elite. Like, why are you not taking down Paul Craig? Is his guard game that dangerous to where you have to forcefully stand with Paul Craig for 3 rounds straight? Right? And if you are going to stand with Paul Craig for 3 rounds straight, at least tee him up. Do not go to a iffy competitive decision and then talk as if you're the next big thing in the middleweight division. And then when you fight Rainer de Ritter, yes, Rainer de Ritter is good, but do not fold up to like 7 or 8 knees to the body because most of the top level fighters are not going to fold to 7 or 8 knees to the body. Right? I don't even think Rodolfo Vieira would fold to 7 or 8 knees to the body by Rainer de Ritter. And that's what it simply comes down to. I think Rodolfo Vieira is an actual fighter, whereas Bo Nickal is he was already put on fraud watch. I guess he's put on fraud watch again. All right, this is the sequel, and I think Rodolfo Vieira is going to beat him in an MMA fight. It's as simple as that. All right, even if Bo Nickal can get takedowns, what is he gonna do on the ground against Rodolfo Vieira, who has world class jiu-jitsu and has been able to implement it even against the likes of Anthony Hernandez? All right, before ultimately losing. All right, but prior to that, he was kind of winning the fight. Rodolfo Vieira he's gonna be able to outbox Bo Nickal. And yes, you could talk about his cardio isn't all that good past the second round. Is Bo Nickal really gonna test the cardio? Bo Nickal couldn't even test Paul Craig's chin in a 3 round fight. Right? He landed roughly 30 strikes across 3 rounds against Paul Craig. And against Rainer de Ritter, he kind of folded past the first round. So in what world is Bo Nickal going to be able to test Rodolfo Vieira's cardio? All right. It's going to go to a 3 round fight. That's what I'm going to think it's going to go down to. But Rodolfo Vieira's not going to work hard in order to outbox Bo Nickal over the course of 3 rounds. All right. The only way I could see Bo Nickal possibly winning this is if he flukes overhand left hand. Other than that, no. It's impossible for Bo Nickal to win. This could age like milk, but I'm fairly confident to say that Rodolfo Viera will outbox him for 3 rounds, 30-27, and then we get to get rid of Bo Nickal once and for all. Thank the Lord. All right, now moving on to the main card, we got Beneil Dariush versus Benoit Saint-Denis. Now, I understand why a lot of people are going with Benoit Saint-Denis, right? Like, I'm not even gonna use MMA math on this one just because Beneil Dariush beat Renato Moicano and Renato Moicano beat Benoit Saint-Denis. Like, I'm not gonna use any of that, but I kind of get it though. Like Benoit Saint-Denis, he's a marauder. He's aggressive. He knows how to make a fight dirty. But that's the thing though. What happens if the fight doesn't get finished in the first round? And I understand this is a big ask because Beneil Dariush's chin, oh my goodness, it is unbelievably cooked. All right. One shot, like a gust of wind, can potentially knock out Beneil Dariush in the first round at this point. Like, I'm not confident in this pick, but I'm going to go with Beneil Dariush on this one. All right. Beneil Dariush has the game to make Benoit Saint-Denis work really hard, and that's what it simply comes down to. Benoit Saint-Denis is not a guy like Charles Oliveira who can pick his shots, who has one punch knockout power, who can throw multiple piece combinations. He's not like an Armin Sarukian who's secretly powerful, who's pretty fast. Benoit Saint-Denis is slow as shit. He is strong, but he doesn't set up any strikes. He doesn't set up any feints. This is how Benoit Saint-Denis typically fights. Either just maraud forward with his chin, letting people tee off on him throughout the entire fight, or he mixes in the kicks with the takedowns, all right? He'll keep slamming the high kick, so you raise your arms. It hurts your arms, so you're like kind of preoccupied with that. And as soon as he feints one, he can then level change for a takedown. I don't think that's the game plan against a guy like Beneil Dariush, who, say what you will about his striking, all right? He's slow as shit, and it takes a while for him to really get things going. But at the end of the day, Beneil Dariush is a heavy scrambler. He is impossible to hold down unless you're Charles Oliveira, who honestly knocked him down first in order to outgrapple him. All right. Beneil Dariush is going to make Benoit Saint-Denis work. I don't see this fight ending in the first round because when's the last time Benoit Saint-Denis really got a first round knockout? All right. He has to use his grappling in order to set things up. And Beneil Dariush is arguably the best scrambler in the lightweight division, maybe other than Gamrot. And we already saw that fight between Beneil Dariush and Matheus Gamrot. So I'm going to go with Beneil Dariush, crafty vet performance, 29-28. Can this fight age like milk? Yes, of course, all right? And if this prediction ages like milk, I will fully allow everybody watching this to call me a mental retard for picking Beneil Dariush. Because in hindsight, why would you pick Beneil Dariush? But I don't think Benoit Saint-Denis is going to flat out chin him in the first round. Because I don't think he's ever flat out chinned somebody other than Matt Frivola with a head kick. And we kind of know how that loss is turning out to. So we're going to go with Beneil Dariush, crafty vet performance, 29-28 decision against Benoit Saint-Denis. All right, now moving on, we got Leon Edwards versus Carlos Prates. I'm going to go with Carlos Prates on this one. All right, it's very simple. We all love CP, Carlos Prates. All right. And the reason I say this is because Leon Edwards in 2025 is cooked. All right. And it's just simply what it is. And I'm not just saying this because he lost to Sean Brady and Bilal Muhammad. All right. Those are elite level fighters with completely different styles to Carlos Prates. I just don't think Leon Edwards He's gonna be able to pick apart Carlos Prates over the course of 3 rounds. Right? Leon Edwards, the only way I could see him winning this fight is if he heavily grapples. But when he heavily grapples, that typically zaps at the gas tank of Leon Edwards, which is already pretty questionable to begin with. Right? Even though he's been through 5 round fights for a majority of his career. Now, Carlos Prates, on the other hand, yes, you could say he got fraud checked by Ian Gary, but I can't believe I'm saying this. I really can. And it pisses me off to this day that keep having to say this. I don't think Leon Edwards is Ian Gary, man. Oh, like it again, it hurts. It really hurts for me to say this because I wanted nothing but to see Carlos Prates sleep that slimy bastard Ian Gary hold on the canvas. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because Ian Gary kind of outstruck Carlos Prates. But look at how Ian Gary was able to outstrike Carlos Prates. It was by throwing multiple beat combinations. It was by being offensive on the front foot. It was by mixing in level changes to get Carlos Prates to think about the takedown threat. When has Leon Edwards done any of those things? I don't remember a time, right? And people think that Leon Edwards does really well against other elite level strikers. When's the last time Leon Edwards fought an elite level striker? Right? The last time he's fought an elite level striker is Donald Cerrone. Let me just say this. I think Carlos Prates is a lot better than Donald Cerrone, even back then. All right. Carlos Prates has that crazy one punch knockout power. I think his ability to shot select is a lot better. I think Carlos Prates is longer. All right. Maybe he's not as fast as Donald Cerrone. Maybe he can't throw the combinations, but I do think his head movement's better. I do think he's stronger in the clinch than Donald Cerrone. All right. I don't see a path of victory for Leon Edwards unless he grapples. But if he grapples, he's going to need to do that for 15 minutes straight because when's the last time Leon Edwards ever got a submission in the UFC? I'm going to go with Carlos Prates to sleep Leon Edwards out cold in the second round. All right. It's just going to be the same old story. Leon Edwards barely throws shit. He's going to throw like 10 leg kicks in the first round. Carlos Prates, although he's not prone to throwing with output, the difference is the power in his strikes. All right. That's why Carlos Prates is able to get away with it because many opponents are preoccupied with the fact that Carlos Prates has the touch of death, which is something that Leon Edwards has never been able to show outside of his 5th round knockout against Kamaru Usman in their fight. All right. Other than that, I can't recollect the time that Leon Edwards even dropped someone. So I'm gonna go with Carlos Prates. He's gonna take his shots. If this is a traditional Muay Thai fight, which I think it's gonna be, Carlos Prates will keep up with Leon Edwards on the numbers, but the difference being Carlos Prates will hit the more damaging shots, and eventually he will find the left hand on Leon Edwards' chin, drop him, and then put him away with ground and pound or by a brutal finish. Either way, I'm going to go with Carlos Prates by KO or TKO. All right, now moving on, we got Sean Brady versus Michael Morales. Okay, now this is a weird one because I can honestly feel the vibes of Michael Morales winning this fight. Like, Michael Morales proves a lot of weird challenges to Sean Brady. He's tall as shit. He hits incredibly hard. He's got an incredibly long reach, and he will not break the pressure that easily. But the thing is, I'm gonna go with Sean Brady on this one. And the reason I say this is because I don't know how good Michael Morales is. Whereas I know Sean Brady is the legit next contender for the welterweight division. Michael Morales, like, is he that much of a phenom where he puts away Gilbert Burns in the first round? Or is Gilbert Burns unbelievably washed? Like, I think both can be true, but I don't know about his best win being Gilbert Burns by knockout. Okay, Sean Brady. he beat Gilbert Burns right before Michael Morales did, which isn't that long ago. But at the same time, though, Sean Brady beat Gilbert Burns by beating him in Gilbert Burns' own game, which is the grappling. Right? Sean Brady has proven grappling at the highest level, and I don't know if Michael Morales has. And there's one thing I noticed regarding Michael Morales, and whenever opponents try to grapple with him, especially through takedowns, he gives up his back so easily. Like in the Gilbert Burns fight, yes, he was able to break away from the position, but immediately as Gilbert Burns shoots in for the double leg, Michael Morales, in order to get himself up against the cage, he gives up his back and then heads over to the cage in order to break the grip. And even did that against Neil Magny when Neil Magny tried to do Neil Magny things by clinching Michael Morales up against the fence. I don't think that's gonna work against Sean Brady. All right. I know Sean Brady's back control isn't the best part of his jiu-jitsu because I honestly think that Sean Brady's best part is his mount and half guard game. All right. He's unbeatable if he gets to mount or half guard. All right. His sure chances goodbye. But I think he's good enough to take note of Michael Morales' tendencies to give up his back. And I do think he's good enough to control Michael Morales' back for at least a round. Like Sean Brady, think about this. He was able to control Kelvin Gastelum, and Kelvin Gastelum is so fat that you physically cannot wrap your legs around him with a body triangle. Right? Like Kelvin Gastelum, despite being so fat that you can't control him with the body triangle, Sean Brady was still able to take the back and almost submit him for like 3 rounds. All right. I think Sean Brady will be able to uh take the back of Michael Morales, possibly find the rear naked choke, but Sean Brady isn't a rear naked choke guy typically. I'm gonna say that he goes for like either the mount, maybe he goes like a 30-27 grappling clinic. I could see a submission, but maybe not. Right? But bare minimum, I'm gonna go with Sean Brady to dominate Michael Morales in the grappling 30-27 via decision. And we're probably gonna see Sean Brady fight for the welterweight title next. All right, now moving on, we got Valentina Shevchenko versus Zhang Weili. Now, I flirted with the idea of Valentina Shevchenko winning this fight because I do think she's low key underrated by most of the fans in the sport right now. Like, Valentina Shevchenko outstruck Manon Fiorot, and that's really hard to do. Like, Manon Fiorot was looked at as the striker who could possibly outstrike Valentina Shevchenko. And instead, the reverse happened, where we kind of expected Valentina Shevchenko to try to wrestle Manon Fiorot, but it was Manon Fiorot getting pieced up really badly, so she was the one forced to shoot double legs repeatedly. However, I think Zhang Weili is too good. It's as simple as that. Zhang Weili, the thing I like about her is the fact that she makes it clear that wins the fight. Whereas I don't recollect the last time Valentina Shevchenko's really done that. Right? I know she clearly won against Alexa Grasso, but that was just Valentina Shevchenko smudging Alexa Grasso up against the canvas for 4 rounds. Is she gonna do that to Zhang Weili? Right? I get it. It is moving up a weight class, so maybe the size discrepancies there. But at the same time, Zhang Weili is so much more skilled than a lot of the girls that Valentina Shevchenko's gone up against. Now, maybe she can't match the physicality of a Manon Fiorot. And I don't know if Zhang Weili can be successful as Manon Fiorot with the takedowns. I do think she has the grappling advantage. And I think on the feet, Shevchenko hasn't fought someone as fast and as calculated as Zhang Weili for quite some time. All right. Zhang Weili, especially because she's coming up with lighter women's skill, he's gonna be looking like the Speedy Gonzalez, picking at Valentina Shevchenko. Can Valentina Shevchenko outstrike Zhang Weili? Sure, but I think it's going to be very close on the feet. Whereas in the grappling, I see Zhang Weili as the one who holds the advantage because she's the one with the actual submission threat. She's the one with actual dangerous ground and pound. She's the one who's actively trying to pass opponents' guards. Right? Zhang Weili is, I believe, the more polished grappler than Valentina Shevchenko. And on the feet, I'm not entirely too sure as to whether or not Valentina Shevchenko holds the advantage. So I'm going to go with Zhang Weili to win this fight by decision 49-46, 48-47. I do think this is going to be close, but I think at the end of the day, we're going to hear Ed New Zhang Weili for double champion for both the strawweight and flyweight division. All right, now moving on to the main event, we got Jack Della Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev. I'm gonna go with Jack Della Maddalena. Like, I know, shocker, right? Anybody who's followed my channel for a while, like, I know this is a shocker. Like, who would have saw that one coming? But I actually really do believe that Jack Della Maddalena is gonna win this fight. All right, I'm not gonna use any of the typical points that most JDM fans use, like, oh, Islam Makhachev only fights short notice opponents. Oh, Islam Makhachev fought a one-hit Dustin Poirier and almost got finished. Oh, he took Alexander Volkanovski, who's a featherweight, to a decision. Like, I'm not gonna use any of those points. I'm not even gonna use the points like, oh, Islam Makhachev's clearly gonna lose on the feet to Jack Della Maddalena, because I do think there are chances for Islam Makhachev. But the reason I say that Jack Della Maddalena is gonna win is because I see this fight going to a decision. I don't think there's going to be a finish in this fight, and that's the difference. All right, Jack Della Maddalena, as the fight progresses, I think will look better than Islam Makhachev. All right, can Islam Makhachev possibly find a submission in the later rounds? Maybe, but like when he fought Dustin Poirier, but he typically doesn't do that. Islam Makhachev is typically known putting people out in the first two rounds. All right. And I don't see that happening with Jack Della Maddalena, who has underrated jiu-jitsu. You know, we got the Greg Jones specifics over here. He has the uh similar movements to Alexander Volkanovski when it comes to scrambling, and also the fact that JDM, I think, will be able to hang with Islam Makhachev, considering he's of similar build to Makhachev himself, right? Like, that's the thing. I know that Islam Makhachev is not going to be at a size disadvantage, right? I'm not going to be the one to say that, oh, JDM's too big, but don't recollect a time where Islam Makhachev really fought someone who's like at similar, like, what do you call stature to him, right? I feel like everybody Islam Makhachev's fought is like smaller than him, right? Whether it be by height or by like, I don't know, like the, what do you call it? The weight, weight. I don't think Islam Makhachev's really fought someone who is of similar build to him, and I think that's gonna bite as the fight progresses, especially because Islam Makhachev is moving up, bulking up, to 170. So I think JDM, right? The first two rounds, it's gonna be iffy, but starting from round 4, I can see Jack Della Maddalena winning on the feet. He's gonna pick his shots by painting combinations both in southpaw and orthodox. Islam Makhachev's boxing defense is kind of sus, considering he moves back only in linear direction. And this is the other thing too. I know he outstruck Volkanovski. Volkanovski, all right, you could say that he's the much more accomplished striker than Jack Della Maddalena, but Jack Della Maddalena has a style that's better for Islam Makhachev. Volkanovski, whenever he stand switches, he's very fast, but he doesn't have the defense, which is how Islam Makhachev is able to capitalize on that. JDM, on the other hand, first off, most of his combinations start in the southpaw stance, which is something to note because Volkanovski is not as good at southpaw as he's an orthodox. And second off, JDM, he can also move in combinations and defend himself, right? Which is something that Volkanovski doesn't do the best at. Volkanovski is typically known for blitzing in and retreating back out with at the end of his combinations. And yes, you could say that Volkanovski is a lot faster than JDM. You could say that his kicks are better than JDM. But I do believe that JDM's stance switch is better. His tight boxing combinations are better. His combinations in general, especially to the body, are better. And he hits harder than Volkanovski. I don't think that's a controversial take, right? I think JDM, the later rounds, is going to like pick apart Islam Makhachev on the feet. In the early rounds, I do fear for him though, because Islam Makhachev is at his most dangerous. But again, I don't see this fight being in the first two rounds because the Craig Jones specifics, all right? I might sound like a casual saying this. And if Islam Makhachev submits him in the first two rounds, like, I'm going to be so sad, all right? I can definitely see that happening. But I'm gonna pick on it not. All right. That's simply what it is. So I'm gonna go with JDM 48-47 decision. All right. There's gonna be a lot of back and forth. There's gonna be times where Islam Makhachev is kind of dominating JDM in the grappling, but there's also gonna be moments where JDM is gonna outstrike Islam Makhachev. Now, there are chances for Islam Makhachev on the feet. I do fear that when JDM dips his head low, there's a chance for Islam Makhachev to grab the tie clinch and blast the knee up front. But I don't KO everybody, all right? Like Poirier. Poirier was able to tank those, right? Now, I'm not saying that Poirier is someone who's that much more frail than JDM, right? But I think JDM can tank those shots if Dustin Poirier can, right? That's all I'm going to say about that. So I'm going to go with JDM to win this fight. The later rounds, 48-47 decision, right? We're going to hear the likes of Kenny Okoye and MMA Joey calling this a robbery, but I'm going to say it's pretty clear that JDM's going to win 3 rounds to 2. And still, JDM is the welterweight champion of the UFC. All right, that's going to be it for this video. If you guys want to see more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe so we can get this channel monetized. Otherwise, though, leave a comment down below who you guys having winning for all of these fights, especially the main event, because that's probably the one that we care about most. Outside of that, though, all right, leave a comment down below also regarding suggestions for other videos, as I'll probably make them. But other than that, all right, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.